Thank you.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. Today it's a little different format with the episode. Obviously with the recent events that's been going on in Afghanistan and all the troop withdrawal and all that stuff that's going on there. I noticed a lot of the veteran community and even some of the active duty kind of just share their thoughts and their emotions and their feelings and what's going on there now. So I wanted to bring out a fellow corpsman, combat veteran who also deployed in Afghanistan, and a previous guest as well. You can check out his episode. I've known her than John Crowley. John, what's going on, man?
What's going on, Chief? Glad to be back.
Well, I appreciate you for, like I said, just taking the time here on short notice and kind of, letting us, into your thoughts and recently what's been going on in Afghanistan with withdrawal. Before we get into that, can you just, for those that might not know, can you just share with our audience, your service, how long you served for, and some of the deployments that you went to?
Yeah, I went from so I enlisted in the Navy 2009. I was kind of a troublemaker. I got my associate's degree in firefighting, and at age 21, I kind of didn't know what I want to do with my life. I figured I needed a resume builder, so I joined the Navy as a corpsman in 2009. Went to boot camp in Great Lakes. So like Great Lakes back then, A school was in Great Lakes, so did all that. Went from across the street, did my thing, became a corpsman. Went down to Guantanamo Bay for 18 months. We actually responded to the Haiti earthquake then around 2010. So I was in Gitmo for 2009 and 2011 for 18 months. Then I went West Coast to FMTV West in Camp Pendleton when it was still all dudes, and then got attached with 1-7 Suicide Charlie on 29 Palms. Did a workout from like Bridgeport and stuff like that. I got ready for Sangin. Went to Sangin, Afghanistan in 2012. Did my thing there. Came back, became a TTCG Coyote instructor. Then got out in 2014. And right now I'm going back in the doing working 2 fire departments. So for Columbus Fire Auxiliary, Union Township by the prisons, Chillicothe, VA, and run my own business. So that's pretty much my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, and episode 26, that was the first episode you were in. And we talked a little bit about your business. You mentioned your business, JCrow Consult. Important things you're teaching not just our community, but the civilian community as well, teaching them life-saving skills, in regards to TCCC and all that. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
It's interesting you bring up Afghanistan because I literally taught a class last week. And it's kind of depressing and kind of interesting seeing the Afghanistan Iraq slides from like your generation, my generation. We talk about it. And yeah, I teach both military and civilian, from BLS to TCCC, but I also go in depth with it too. Actually, a guy on the TCCC slides, you probably know him, Master Chief Edward Byers. I got an award from Ohio Hall of Valor last year, and he's from Ohio too, from Toledo, Ohio. He got the Medal of Honor.
Right.
He's a SEAL corpsman, but yeah, like it's just interesting talking to guys like that, Dakota Meyer, and their input on the war too, what's going on in Afghanistan. But yeah, we basically teach TCCC to both military and civilian. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be a high demand because things are about to pop off again. So
yeah, so you mentioned your time with the Marines, your deployment, obviously combat deployment. You were injured, correct? And
that's correct, Chief. Actually, was in your old unit. You were in Suicide Charlie, right?
Yeah.
I was Suicide Charlie in Sangin, and Sangin, Afghanistan. If you ask any Marine or corpsman that've been there, or guys like you, it was a rough area. A lot of Marine sailors and British died there, and it's sad seeing all that land we took over go back to the bad guys. They just gave them to the keys, you know?
Yeah, you know, you, you mentioned Suicide Charlie 1-7. I did 3 combat deployments in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan, but more so with combat in Iraq. You were there in Sangin when you deployed, with 1-7. With the recent things that's going on now, like, you mentioned, like, we kind of just gave the keys, right? Like, have you talked to any of your old Marines or just fellow other veterans?
Oh yeah.
Like what are some of their thoughts, or with that?
Well, we're scrambling. Like my old platoon commander, shout out to him. We got our interpreter that got injured during my mass cas. My squad got wiped out during 2 ID explosions during a night mission. He got him and his family a visa a while back, but he's trying to get one of the like legit ANA guys that we worked with in PB Handjar and Handjar Yak before he got hurt. And boy, it's a pain in the ass getting the visa here. Like I didn't realize the red tape or bureaucracy behind it, man. It's crazy. And I feel bad for the ones that are good over there left there. You can't save them all, but a lot of my Marines and corpsmen buddies, like they call me and they ask my opinion. I'm like, well, guys like you and I, Chief, we saved as best we can. It was beyond our power. And that's why I want to tell everybody, all the men and women right now who never went to combat or whatever, like, or been to combat, you did what you could. You saved as much as you can. The people above us, the higher ups, the politicians, corporations, that wasn't our shindig. That wasn't our call. What happened recently,
Yeah, I think that's an important message on that you're just saying there. It's just, basically we did our job and more, right? Like, we did the best that we could with what we had, especially with the Marines, right? You know how it is. Like, there's you do the best with what you have, and you carry on and try to save as many lives as you can as a corpsman. That's your priority. That's your number one job. No matter who they put in front of you, friendly or enemy, right? Your job is to treat people and try to save as many people as you can.
And unfortunately, I deal with it still on the civilian side as a firefighter EMT. Like I said, I work in the prisons by one of my other fire departments, and you're gonna be treating people that you don't want to treat. You're gonna treat people that, same thing in Afghanistan, Iraq. You're gonna treat insurgents or people that were scumbags. You can't judge them. You do the best to treat them. Same thing here stateside.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about some of the Afghans that you worked with. I don't know if you've been kind of just listening to the news. I mean, I try not to, but
yeah,
me
too.
people are, or the news is saying, there's still thousands of people that have helped the U.S. military. They're still stuck there. Even saying as far as like Americans that are still there, that are still stuck trying to get out. What are some of the thoughts that are running in your head, or some of the other veterans that you talk to?
Well, again, when I talked to the Vietnam veterans last night and night before, because I go to like Tuesday night group with Vet Center, and actually help with the VA and the Vet Center, like volunteer work as well on the side. And we talked about Saigon versus now. And like I asked the Vietnam vets, like straight up, like, hey, when you guys left Vietnam, was there like some resistance to like the North Vietnamese or China or whomever it was? Like pretty much, they're like, yeah, there was some, but not like what happened with you guys. They basically explained, like, and that was just like I was saying earlier, it seemed like the Afghans just basically just didn't put up a fight. You get what I'm saying? There was no shots fired. There wasn't like resistance fighters or anything like that. That was the thing that made me upset, that like, with all the Afghans. And I actually have a video of me treating an Afghan with a RPG backblast. At least the guys we were with, some of them were able to fight, and a lot of them weren't. But it just seemed like nobody fought in like Kabul or anything like that. It was like, oh, here's the keys to the city. Here we go.
Yeah, I think everybody was kind of surprised as far as like how quickly the Taliban kind of just took over.
Well, and you being a chief, like I was thinking about this too, like EDL and stuff like that, with all the guns that they got, guns, drones, helicopters. Like, how come nobody like took out the bolts of the guns, or like how come nobody like fragged the like kind of like the scene in Black Hawk Down when they put a thermite or whatever in the Black Hawk? How come nobody took the time to do that? Like that's what I like. I don't know. Like if the higher ups knew that, they're like, hey, it's probably gonna fall in the hands of the Afghans. We probably should blow up the drones and stuff like that before they get their mitts on it,
Yeah, yeah,
or all the classified stuff there. Like it's kind of scary.
yeah. And it's kind of just wondering, like, with how we kind of just left there, um, what else, like, what could be in the hands of in the Taliban right now, and things like that.
Well, in the Vietnam vets brought up a good point. You remember like seeing like the footage of like them like pushing like Hueys and stuff like that in the ocean? At
Yeah, yeah,
least, yeah, like for like fall Saigon, at least there was a lot of American equipment that was left there in Vietnam, but at least the military then was trying to get rid of a lot of the stuff before the bad guys got their hands on it.
Do you feel the comparison is justifiable? Like, you've seen that picture where the helo on top of the building evacuating Americans and things like that, like the similarities, right? Like, do you feel like
Oh
it's
yeah.
justifiable as far as like Afghanistan and Vietnam?
Well, a lot of you probably remember like the old Saigon picture, like a Huey on top of the building to like a Chinook versus
Yeah,
like right
yeah,
now, it's just similar with the Chinooks and the C-17s. You probably saw the crazy videos of the C-17 trying to take off and the dude got caught in the wheel, kind of like the guy in Con Air or whatever. But like, there's some similarities, but again, um, when I think of Vietnam, the fall of Saigon, I also think of like the picture of like the South Vietnamese general blowing that dude's head off. Like he pulls the trigger and just drills that
right.
dude in the head. Again, there didn't seem like there was any resistance at all. Like I don't know, man. And a lot of the A&A that we train and cop, they're opportunists, man. They're probably thinking, well, that Taliban probably hook it up, so they probably switch sides. It flipped.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's been several days this past weekend, right? You mentioned you talked to some of the Vietnam veterans the other day, right?
Yes, sir. Tuesday night. Well, yeah, last night, and day before, but yeah.
Other than that, like, other than talking to them, were there any other Marines or maybe fellow corpsmen that you kind of reached out to, or they reached out to you and kind of just expressed their
Well, yeah,
emotions or frustrations or things like that?
oh yeah, a lot of people, even the like guys on Xbox to play with, the scroll docs and the boot nurse, I'm sure they're feeling the same thing. A lot of us just feel not just disappointment, just a lot of emotions all in one. We just feel like we just want to know why on a lot of it, and I feel bad for the younger generation because I couldn't imagine being in your shoes, being in the military, trying to explain to your sailors like, okay, we got stuff in Afghanistan, also in Haiti, and oh, by the way, the Delta variant's coming away, like coming a thing as well. It's just, I don't know, it's just a lot to take in. I think that's why a lot of people are emotional now because it's just so much taken in. Like, and then you're seeing stuff on Instagram of people getting their heads blown off, like these little kids getting shot in the head, or like the interpreters getting killed, or like the dude stuck on a C-17 on the wheel. It's just, I think it's very surreal. And a lot of the Vietnam vets, they talked about that too, where like not only when they got home got treated like dog shit, and even like the World War II vets and Korea vets treat them like shit in the VFWs, but how a lot of them hear it on like the radio or news and they're like, fuck, like it's over. And I think a lot of us are now feeling that currently. So
John, what do you think are some of the, you know, yeah, you're right. You're right. Like, a lot of us are, especially the ones that are OIF or OEF vets, right? Like, a lot of them are frustrated, they're upset, maybe asking why, things like that. What do you think are some ways we can kind of help them with their, how they're feeling now, and kind of just like kind of help them through these situations?
well, biggest suggestion for everybody going through this is You got to find purpose after fact. You got to keep yourself busy. If you sit at home drinking, thinking about it, it's just going to make it worse. If you're isolating yourself from everybody, it's going to make it worse. You got to go out, talk to your friends, or go to groups like I do, or go, the Save a Warrior, or go, volunteer. Like tomorrow, I'm shooting with the FBI, with Wounded Warrior and stuff like that. We're going to do weapons training and shooting a lot of cool guns. Like, you got to keep yourself busy. That's why people are like, well, you're 100% prone to tell your combat wound. Why don't you stay home? Like, nah, man. Like, if I stay home, that's part of the problem. And it's just a lot. Like, again, a lot of you need to understand it's not over till it's over. And yeah, we lost the war in Iraq or Afghanistan. Like, it's whatever. We're probably more shit's probably going to happen after the fact. Let's just call it like we see it. Just, you still want to train. Like, for example, the best thing I heard one of my guys say recently, like about those 1-8 and 2-1 Marines being sent to Afghanistan, they're probably coming from like a U or UDP, and they probably had like fragment orders like, hey, guess what? You're going to Afghanistan. And there you go. The training like with TCCC or CLS and all that other shit that you and I learned comes into play. That's why you should train like you fight no matter what, because you never know. Or the people going down to Haiti right now, same thing. You never know when something happens. So.
Yeah, I think to your first point, I think that's very important. Obviously, just not trying to keep it all to your, the emotions that you're having, not to try to keep it all to yourself, right? Most important thing that you can do is just be around other veterans, or your brothers and sisters in arms, and kind of just let it out, share your thoughts, and not take to the other vices like drinking and
drugs
and things like that, right? Just being around other people that have been through the similar situations that you have, and just talking about it. I think that's the most important thing.
Well, and that like with you, Chief. So I'm trying to get my words together. You went through a lot of shit too. You went through 3 combat deployments, and like, I can't imagine what you're going through, because you had 2 more deployments than me as far as combat goes. And like, what are your feelings on all this stuff?
I mean, for me, man, like trying to watch my words, because
I get it. I get it.
No, but I posted. I made a post the other day, kind of just after reading some of the comments and posts that some of the other veterans and military members put out there. It's like, it's a lot of mixed emotions, right? And to me, I was kind of like, for a couple of days, kind of just like a loss for words, as far as like to describe like what's going on in the situation. And I think the most important thing is, to your point earlier, is no matter how you're feeling, like, don't feel like what you did there was all for naught, because yes, we tried to make that a country better, but we also, for the most part, were there for each other, right? Like, anytime you go into combat, like, what's the most important thing is just watch each other's back, watch each other's six. And like you said earlier, right? Like, we did the best we could with what we had. And I think the most important thing is to continue to watch each other's six, just to be there for each other, whether just listening to somebody talk about what their feelings are, their thoughts are, or giving somebody a call, just buddy check, right? Just checking up on them. I think that's the most important thing that we can kind of do right now for each other, is just to be there for one another, because like I said, you guys matter. Like, what you did mattered, right?
So
yep, most definitely. Even though politics aside, like, what we did mattered, and just for the veterans out there, you still matter. So
the best quotes I heard from the Vietnam vets last night and the day before, like, the war doesn't really end till you die. And the war, like, they made some good points last night. Like, for example, one of the Vietnam vets had a very interesting viewpoint. He's like, well, I remember going to Vietnam or whatever back like a few years later, like, like the 90s, 2000s, stuff like that. And there was like hotels, McDonald's and stuff like that, in, like the cities. And then like he has all these Vietnamese people from like there in stateside asking for jobs. He was like, well, I guess we won that in that front. Like capitalism won. If they're asking for jobs or work, there you go, we won.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, and like same thing right now. I mean, yeah, we're all bitching the fit on our Wi-Fi or whatever, but honestly, like it beats sleeping out in the desert or on the sticks and the Sangin or a shithole in Afghanistan. Like those people are gonna be like, that's what kills me. Everyone's all up in arms about the women and children now, but it's like I get that, but they're going back to the Stone Age. And whether people like it or not, where was all this rage years ago when we were there? Same thing. Like I saw a video of this Afghan soldier crying when I asked him to give away his guns. I'm like, well, I mean, you should have had that fire in your belly years ago.
Mm.
And for everybody else, Vietnam vets, they crack me up, but they had a lot of wisdom. They're like, Jack, outlive the assholes in your life. I'm like, that's some like words of wisdom, like just nonstop. I'm like, damn, you guys are blowing my mind right now. Yeah, and they're like, hey, like, one of the Vietnam vets like pulled me aside. It's like, I almost blew my brains out years after Vietnam, but you know what saved my life? Hearing my son's crying at night when I go change his diapers and stuff like that. I'm like, man, that's some real shit, dude. And that's
great advice.
Exactly. Well, and you being a combat vet yourself, you need to hear from guys like from Korea and Vietnam, what they went through, because they kind of went through some shit too,
Yeah, most definitely. And I think, like just to your point earlier, right? Like for those that are still in the military, right? Like it's important, right? Like, cause you never know.
No.
You never know what might, like with our brothers that are out there now, right? Like, but you just gotta stay prepared. And that's what we leaders should and should continue to harp on, as far as like with our sailors, Marines, airmen, soldiers, right? Like just continue to stay ready, and because you just never know what might happen. So
well, and I think things are going to happen stateside too. If they make this Delta variant thing and close things down, it's going to piss off people even more. So it doesn't matter what you believe in anymore. Like a fight's going to come out your door whether you like it or not. So that's why life always happens. You always have that plan B.
Most definitely, man. Hey, John, man, I appreciate you for coming on here. Any parting words, any advice, any resources that you can provide for for veterans or active duty who, like I said, have been kind of like asking questions, might be frustrated or upset. What are some advice that you can kind of give them right now?
So there's a bunch of groups out there, not just USO, whatever, that sends stuff to the troop, but there's also like No One Left Behind for like interpreters. There's like, I think it's like Global Surgery Group that's like taking volunteers over there. There's Save a Warrior for mental health, which I went through it. It works, I assure you. There's a lot of ways you can contribute or quote unquote fight back. And I think a lot of your sailors need to hear that, because a lot of them think, oh, I missed the war. What do I do now? Or what was the war worth it? Well, use your experience, use it for something on the outside, or try to get revenge by being successful. Don't dwell on the past too much. That I still, dwell on some things, but you got to keep moving forward. I think what Afghanistan and current events right now is trying to teach all of us how to be resilient and just rely on ourselves. That was the biggest issue in Afghanistan, in my opinion, was there's too much dog and pony. There wasn't a lot of truth. Like a lot of people should just tell it how it is rather than just try to sugarcoat things. I think a lot of people now are seeing the reality of it.
That's a good point. And I think just to what you were saying, man, like just stay resilient, keep moving forward, because like life just throws curveballs, it's challenges you just never know, right? Like you just never know when it'll come. So just keep moving forward.
Well, like I asked you this, Chief, like, did your family work their way to get to America? Like they probably earned their keep too,
Yeah, my parents immigrated when I was what, 7 years old.
Yeah. And see, that's legit because I think a lot of people need to hear your story on that because a lot of people are now realizing how hard it is to get citizenship here. And a lot of the interpreters that we're helping,
Yeah.
it's hard. Like I didn't realize how hard it was until we started like writing reference letters for them and stuff. It's hard. And I appreciate people like you and your family like earn your keep and coming to America and fighting for us. That's awesome.
I
So
appreciate that, man. John, like I said, I appreciate you for coming on. Can you just tell us a little bit about Jayco Console and some of the things anything that coming up that you want to put out there? Or?
yeah, I still gotta play catch up on social media and emails and the posts. I got like stuff from like 2 years I still got to catch up with. But yeah, we teach both military and civilian. We're trying to play nice with certain organizations like DHA and NAMT, but hopefully both military and civilian we can find a way to teach everybody across the board because I think everybody needs at least some form of training or at least medical training, especially in the times we live in right now. I'm not trying to fearmonger or nothing like that, but I do it for my mental health mostly, like teaching CPR to trauma. Like it keeps me busy. So
yeah, it's a way of stress reliever for you, right?
oh yeah. And like I said, like when I talk about guys like you or Iraq, Afghanistan, whatever, I do it for you guys like yourself. That I'm like, hey, I know a chief that was in my unit. And it's like the famous 1-8 picture in Fallujah, the Marine Corps trying to get the guy in the middle of the street. Like that was your generation, man.
I appreciate that, man.
No problem. I mean, thank you for everything. Seriously.
Well, thank you for what you're doing, and obviously with your company as far as teaching all kinds of people life-saving skills that they can use in their everyday life. So John, I appreciate you for coming on, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
All right, take care.
Bye.